Hi, this is Matt Regier for EDL 850 with my presentation on religion in schools. So for this presentation, just an overview of what we'll be doing today. I'll start with a review of our current board policy for USD 206, and I'll follow that up with a review of the current research in regards to religion in schools based on the 2019 Pew Report on Religion in Schools and the USDE Guidance Report from 2020. So our current board policy for USD 206. We've got four main points about religion in schools. The first has to do with teaching about religion. Teachers may teach about religion. They may teach about religious literature. They may teach about religious history, but they may not promote or disparage any beliefs or non-beliefs. They can't push that one direction or the other. Religious texts are allowed, such as the Bible, but not in order to promote doctrine. So you could read a religious text, but it needs to be for the literary value or the historical value. We've also got a portion in our board policy about religion and curriculum and activities. Religious elements may be included in curriculum and activities such as music, art, literature, or drama. This would include a religious song for a Christmas concert potentially, or maybe even a band concert or art. There may be a religious element included there. It needs to be balanced and objective. There needs to be an academic portion to that religious element. So we need to be able to grade the musical quality or the artistic quality. And this needs to be a traditional part of a holiday or a field of study. So again, a Christmas carol could fit there. That would be a traditional part of a holiday as well. Religious symbols in classrooms, a temporary display as part of the academic curriculum is acceptable as far as a religious symbol hung up in a classroom. And then for religious holidays, holidays with both religious and secular tradition may be observed. So Thanksgiving might fit with this. Christmas certainly would fit with this. There's some secular tradition as well as some religious tradition there. And then school vacations will have a secular designation. So Christmas vacation isn't termed Christmas, it's termed winter break, things like that. For graduation and ceremonies, those ceremonies will be secular in nature. We'll discuss that a little bit more later. And then for religious objections to activities, this doesn't mean extracurricular activities. This would be even an in-class activity. Parents may submit a written request to opt children out of participation in those activities that are in conflict with their religious beliefs. Those requests are reviewed and approved by the building principal. There is an appeals process if it would get to that point, but parents can request for their children to opt out of participation in activities. So that's our board policy. What does the research say? What is the most current guidance for religion in schools? So the big one that comes up a lot, whether you're talking to people, looking on Facebook, is prayer in schools. And what does the law allow for that? What is the most current guidance? So the Supreme Court cases assure that public schools and all their activities must serve secular purposes. That includes moments of silence. It includes religious readings. It includes outlawing a prayer at graduation for the entire group. The Supreme Court has even upheld the firing of a football coach for post-game prayer with his team on the field. So there must be a secular purpose to everything that a public school does, because we can't push religious doctrine. So a moment of silence can have a secular purpose. A religious reading can have a secular purpose if we're looking at the literary value. A prayer at graduation, the Supreme Court has decided, does not have a secular purpose, and it forces those in participation to participate in a prayer that they may not want to participate in. So according to the Supreme Court, that has been outlawed, and the Supreme Court did uphold that firing of the football coach for a basically non-optional post-game prayer. The Pledge of Allegiance. The phrase "under God" seems like that may not fit there. This was a split decision by the Supreme Court, but generally the Pledge of Allegiance has been upheld. Both the phrase and the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. Students may opt out of that, and that's where there's an out, in some ways different than maybe prayer at graduation. But in general, the Pledge of Allegiance has been upheld, even with the phrase "under God." So overall, there's pretty clear guidance that staff-sponsored prayer is equivalent to forcing students to participate in religious ceremony and is therefore unlawful. And the key word there is staff-sponsored prayer would be forcing students to participate. Student-led prayer is different. Students may pray privately. They may converse about religious topics, similar to how they would about other topics. They might try to convince each other about politics, or they may try to convince each other about sports teams or music. Students may privately pray. They may also converse and try to convince each other about religious topics. Students must be acting on their own, of their own accord. They may not be encouraged or explicitly approved by staff members. And this needs to be individual expression. It also cannot be overt or disruptive in nature. And there is some question whether students in this scenario are individually expressing themselves or are they representatives of the school. If this is say a team captain that is forcing the team to participate in a prayer, even if it's just perceived as forcing the team to participate in prayer, that is a question mark that has been addressed with some split decisions from the courts. Prayer is protected through the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. So once in a while you'll hear something about how prayer has been kicked out of schools. Really, in order to receive funding through the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, schools must certify that they do not prevent or deny participation in constitutionally protected prayer. Now, that doesn't mean staff-sponsored prayer, but student-led prayer, student-led gatherings, those are protected through the ESEA, and that is a portion of prayer and a portion of religion in schools that is protected. So pivoting now to religion and the curriculum. Again, the hot button issue is creationism and evolution. So accepted scientific theory should be taught. Again, schools must have a secular purpose for everything that they do. So accepted scientific theory should be taught. There have been several laws and several lawsuits that have gone to the Supreme Court about this, and I'll address those here. Balanced treatment was one that argued that there needed to be a balanced treatment of creationism and evolution. That was struck down in Edwards versus Aguilar, saying that creationism doesn't need a balanced treatment in the scientific curriculum. Intelligent design was an alternative proposed in a law saying that there should be an intelligent design alternative presented to all students. That was considered a violation of the Establishment Clause in Kitzmiller versus Dover Area School District. So that was also struck down by the argument that intelligent design is a religious theory, not a scientific theory. And so it does not hold merit as having secular value. Bible study programs. Generally, these are not supported by the law. Again, the Bible may be studied if it's studied for its historical value or for its literary value. But study of the Bible typically would be more geared towards a religious aspect, pushing a certain religious belief. The study of the Bible must include critical aspects, open inquiry into the history and content. So typically that would be maybe reading an excerpt of the Bible and not studying the Bible itself. And then holiday programs, again, secular consideration must be given precedence. So the musical quality, the educational value, and students shall not be forced to participate in songs that are in violation of their religious beliefs. Multiculturalism. So this one was interesting to me and new. The religious symbols may be displayed provided they have secular meaning. So again, we see that trend coming up of secular meaning being necessary for it to have academic value in a public school. So the menorah for Hanukkah, a star and crescent for Ramadan, those were both found to have secular significance, and so they were allowed to be presented and displayed within a classroom. Curriculum that disparages or advances the beliefs of a faith is in violation of the Establishment Clause and is unlawful. Again, that trend coming up. So if there is curriculum, if there is a symbol that's displayed, um, if there is even a musical piece that does not have some secular value or is advancing the beliefs of a faith, then it would be in violation of that establishment clause. And then assignments, students may express their beliefs in schoolwork, which those two kind of seem to be in conflict, but this is student based. Students may express their beliefs in schoolwork as long as it's judged based on academic standards. So if a student is required to write a poem and they write it in the form of a psalm or a prayer, that's fine, as long as the psalm or the prayer is judged by its poetic value, by its literary value. If a student does a piece of art and it has a faith-based theme within their art, as long as it's judged for the artistic value, that would be acceptable. So rights, the rights of students. We'll start with that. So Tinker versus the Des Moines School District. This is kind of the landmark case for student religious rights. And the Supreme Court found that school authorities cannot suppress expression of religion unless it causes a significant disruption. And in this case, it wasn't even expression of religion necessarily, but they cannot suppress expression unless it causes a significant disruption to the school. That was helpful in some ways, but it did lead to some uncertainty about what exactly is a significant disruption. So there's some more guidance from the USDE about religious expression in public schools. Students may engage in religious activity, just like comparable secular activities. So as long as they're comparable, students may engage in those religious activities. Students may pray. They may assemble religiously together, as long as that is comparable to what a secular activity or a secular group would do. Students may not harass each other. They may not compel others to religious activity. We also wouldn't accept that from a secular group, to harass another group or to compel others to join a group strongly. Schools may not favor a certain group based on its religious identity, and that is a student right. A school may not show favoritism to one group over another one, and that goes for both religion and secular groups. We wouldn't favor the chess club over the football team. We also wouldn't favor the Christian group over the Buddhist group or over the chess club. So schools may not favor groups based on religious identity. So the rights of parents. Religious opt-outs are the big ones for parents. Parents may opt their child out of offensive lessons or offensive activities. The Wisconsin versus Yoder decision was the big one for this, and it allowed the Amish community to withdraw their children from school. Rather than staying until the typical compulsory age of 16, they were allowed to withdraw children at 14. That set a precedence, and this is commonly used for units on sexuality or reproduction. But more recent court cases have actually sided with school districts commonly on the issues of religiously offensive curriculum and activities. The parent must be able to prove that that activity or that unit is religiously offensive or out of line with their religion in order for this to apply. And then for teachers and administrators, beliefs may be disclosed but not pushed. I think that's a fairly simple but applicable tagline for this. A teacher doesn't have to lie to a student and say that they don't have beliefs or that they weren't actually at the church or the mosque on Sunday. So teachers may disclose beliefs, but they can't push them. And as an administrator, the coercive potential allows that administrator to limit the expression of a staff member, especially within school hours. That really is the window where administrators have some say over this. Teachers need to be very conscious of their coercive potential within school hours, according to this research. Outside of school hours, teachers may pretty fully exercise their religious freedom, including in some court cases in the school building where they work. Teachers may exercise their religious freedoms. And then the last piece of the research that was pretty applicable was religion and equal access. The Equal Access Act basically says that student religious activities shall have equal access to school facilities as secular groups. So just like activities must have a secular purpose, student-led religious activities need to have equal access. Schools must allow equal access to school media to announce those meetings, whether those are flyers or the daily announcements or email. Schools must allow equal access to announce meetings, and this would typically apply to an extracurricular club or a meeting outside of instructional time, whether that's lunch or before or after school, a see you at the pole or youth group, that sort of thing must be allowed equal access within the school to a secular activity that would be comparable. So my standard correlation is here. I won't read it. I'll just leave it up on the screen for a moment. My relevancy and my reflection. And there are my references. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it.